which can only mean one thing. It's the Power Performances presented by Courtyard by Marriott. Alongside Ian Eagle, I'm Jason Horowitz. Glad you could join us on this Wednesday edition, week before Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thank
Happy
you.
Hanukkah to you, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to everybody else. And remember, the first couple callers that will call in today, 646-CBS-1000, 646-227-1000, will receive a $50 gift certificate to CBSSportsStore.com. All kinds of stuff. You can get jerseys and gear. And speaking of jerseys, how about a guy? We'll get into our power performances in just a second. We'll let you know about the callers and stuff. But something I want to ask you real quickly, because something that could be a power performance in the future.
Really?
You do the NBA. Allen Iverson, now a Denver Nugget. Your thoughts on the trade real quickly?
A trade that made sense for both teams. I think the Nuggets felt like in order to get into that next classification of elite teams in the NBA, they had to make a big splash. And Philadelphia got everything they were looking for. A player that can step in and help them right away. Andre Miller, Joe Smith, the salary dump, and 2 number-1 picks. I think a pretty good move for both teams.
How bad is it for a guy to be called a salary dump?
You know what? When you're making $6.9 million,
I guess you're
I'm willing
okay
to be
with
a
it.
salary dump. I can't wait. One day, Jason, there is going to be a behind-the-scenes DVD of the Power Performances, so people can see behind the scenes what takes place here on this show just as we're getting on the air. It's incredible, the tireless work that goes into putting this show on, week in and week out. Yeah, controlled chaos before we get on the air, but then you'd never know. If I didn't mention it right now, you'd never know.
Why don't you mention something that you will know, and how about it's what's on the table today?
Yeah, see, I cover the on the table.
That's your job of
That's
the day.
I've become the on the table guy.
That's right.
On
It's
this
like
show.
the salary dump.
New names on our NFL roundup. Sizzling surf. This is creating a buzz around the internet world. Tucker time, and Charlie Casserly will join us from the NFL today, and much more here on the Power Performances, brought to you by Courtyard by Marriott. We're going to get things started here with the NFL, and everybody loves a good comeback story. Chad Pennington would qualify, in my mind, as the comeback player of the year in the NFL. Why? There were many that thought Patrick Ramsey would actually beat him out for the starting job before the season started. Think about that for a moment. The former Washington Redskin who was brought in by the Jets to compete for the starting job. After 2 days of camp, anybody that had been out to Jets camp out on Long Island knew that Chad Pennington was going to be the guy. Eric Mangini's gut instinct was correct. I'll make a statement here that I don't know if you're going to buy into. I know Peyton Manning is the elite quarterback in the NFL, and Phillip Rivers is an up-and-comer, and Carson Palmer, and Drew Brees. There may not be a quarterback that a team relies on more right now in the National Football League than the Jets with Chad Pennington. If Pennington is good, the Jets win. If Pennington isn't good, the Jets aren't good enough to compensate for him not getting it done.
I'll completely buy that statement. Right now, after a loss, the Jets lost, Chad Pennington and the Jets are 5-1. And he only has 5 interceptions in their 8 wins this season. On the other side of that, I believe he has 9 interceptions in their 6 losses. So I'll completely buy that statement. I was thinking the exact same thing. And when you think about this weekend, they knew going into Minnesota they were not going to be able to run the football.
No.
The Vikings, one of the best rush defenses in NFL history. And in the first half, they built a 23-7 lead. Pennington threw it 28 times. They only ran it 11. And he put it on his shoulders, and he got the job done. And I'll tell you what, they have a tough test in Miami this week because the Dolphins, they're not going to the playoffs. But this is a great defense, so they've got a tough test, and Jason Taylor and that whole defensive line have seen Pennington. But I think, you talk about the comeback story. I like the one aspect about this, that Pennington has never played a full season, and I don't want to jinx him here, but he's on the verge of doing something he's never done before.
I think you just did,
Yeah,
by the way.
We'll knock on some wood here. My shoes are not made of wood.
Not made of wood.
We're not in 1900. All right, how about another guy as a comeback story? Not so much as a comeback story as far as injury or the fact that, he's had to overcome. Well, he has had to overcome things as far as, losing his job. Last season, J.P. Losman, a guy that, let's face it, the Buffalo Bills didn't really want in the lineup. He was 1-7 as a starter last year in Buffalo. Guys like Eric Moulds, who's no longer on the Bills, calling him out, saying, we want Kelly Holcomb to be our starter. They went out and got another quarterback this year to back them up as well. And J.P. Losman, folks, he's led the Bills to a 7-7 record this season. He had a career-high 3 touchdowns this past weekend and a 21-0 shutout over the Dolphins, and give the Bills defense credit for getting its first shutout since 2003. But, a quarterback that nobody really believed in. He's got a strong arm, but people say he makes wrong decisions. Bills are 7-7, and he's done it much like Chad Pennington.
You know, Jason, it's interesting because with QBs, you want these guys to be cocky, to be confident, to be sure of themselves when they come into the NFL. Yet, if they don't produce, then that's looked at as a detriment, that they're not realistic about where they fit in. Kyle Bowler is a great example. I remember doing one of Bowler's first games in the NFL, and he was bouncing up and down all over the room, just this frenetic energy about him, and yet he was then criticized weeks later for not really having a good handle on how to lead a team. J.P. Losman, same example, because the Buffalo Bills felt, coming out of Tulane, they found something. They felt like they got a first-round steal in J.P. Losman.
And they traded for him. They traded up for him.
They did indeed. And Losman, who's got a lot of pure ability, he's a California kid. He's from Venice Beach, California, and he does have kind of a California cool about him. I'm not sure that people in Buffalo got it in the beginning. They're beginning to get it now, and I think his teammates are getting it as well. They're feeding off what I would call confidence, some would call cockiness. It's good to see J.P. Losman out there producing, because I do think it's going to turn out to be the right pick for the Buffalo Bills.
The one thing he does very well, at least to this point this season, throw the deep ball, and he and Lee Evans are developing a great chemistry on that note.
All right, let's talk about running backs now. And, you know, the University of Miami, we know, has produced some amazing running backs through the years.
Yes,
and currently with Edgerrin James, with Clinton Portis, guys that really grab the headlines.
Willis McGahee in Buffalo.
Willis McGahee, another one. But I think there's a player that we haven't mentioned yet that, in my mind, has emerged as the best of the bunch. He's a little guy. You wouldn't look at him and say, oh, that's an all-pro in the making. He's very quiet. He's not as out there in your face as the other guys that we mentioned. Frank Gore of the San Francisco 49ers is the best running back in the NFL that nobody is talking about in a year where LT is setting records and Larry Johnson is putting up amazing numbers once again. Frank Gore has gotten himself into the conversation, and he keeps improving. He just signed on with a new agent, a guy that you might have heard of, who likes University of Miami products.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, no. Stop it.
All right, we won't even say
Do we
his name.
have to bring his name into this?
All right, we won't say it. You might recall him from the TO outside his house.
I don't like Drew Rosenhaus.
All right, you just said it. Anyway, Drew Rosenhaus is his agent, and Frank Gore is going to make a boatload of money.
No comment.
Boatload of money. No comment when it comes to his contract, because the contract is going to be huge. San Francisco knows it. The 49ers recognize they have to lock this guy up. A third-round pick by the 49ers in 2005. Frank Gore is looking more and more like a first-round steal.
And Frank Gore now selected to the Pro Bowl as well. It will start for the NFC, but you know, the best thing about Frank Gore is that, you know, we talked about, maybe the theme of this show is comeback stories, because Frank Gore at Miami was ahead of Willis McGahee. He was ahead of Clinton Portis. He had a knee injury. The next year he came back, was a starter. Suffered a knee injury to the other one, was out for the year. Then, you know, people question, when you blow out two knees, can you really come back? He's come back in a vengeance. And you know what the best part about this story is that people last year were talking about Alex Smith as a bust. He is helping Alex Smith along, and they have a great quarterback running back combo for the future. All right, speaking of California, speaking of the coast, speaking of comeback stories, well, you talked about it earlier, something we don't really talk about very much. Something that neither of us have really ever tried, because let's face it, we're not athletic enough to get on a boogie board and surf. And I don't think you call it a boogie board.
What?
Surfing.
My kid has a boogie board. What are you talking about?
One of the best rivalries in sports. It takes to the waves. Andy Irons. Kelly Slater. You think Slater, you think California, you think AC Slater, you think Saved by the Bell. There's your kid.
Mario Lopez. Yeah.
But the first Andy Irons won what's being called one of the best pipeline tournaments of all time.
That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. But Slater, Kelly Slater.
Look at that wave right there.
That looks like something that's on a painting in your house. But Kelly Slater won his 8th title. Now, let's just talk about this for a second, because it's almost Michael Jordan reminiscence. In 1999-2000, he quit the sport after winning 5 titles. He came back. He said, you know what, I'm not done yet. And Andy Irons won 3. Then Kelly Slater, well, he wasn't done. In 2005, he won the title. This year, he won the title. He's catching waves. He's hanging 10.
That
What
was
do you got for
impressive.
that?
Very good research. You know what I have? I feel like I'm a pretty solid expert in this subject. I saw the movie Point Break back in 1991. Patrick Swayze, you might remember his performance as Bodie, and also Keanu Reeves as Johnny Utah, the FBI agent turned surfer. Also impressive performances by Lori Petty and Gary Busey in that film. So I feel like I can relate.
IMDb for this?
No, this is all off the top of my head. I'm just one of those kind of guys. I feel like I can relate to this, and I have a sense of what you're talking about. That is a great rivalry between Irons and Slater, and the fact that they are getting their due here on Power Performances, brought to you by Courtyard by Marriott. It touches my heart.
It does.
Right here.
By the way.
Right here.
By the way, let's just give a little props to Jeff Caldwell, our producer.
Yes.
Because he is a surfing fanatic. And Jeff, we'd like to see you. Maybe that picture, one of these days, we'll get you on that board and get a picture.
One more mention, if I can. We get these cards every week, and our research department does an incredible job of putting together the blue cards. Normally, we've got about 7 or 8 little bullet points.
Yeah.
There are 4 pages of card. They just don't end. I've never seen more surfing research in my life. This is incredible. The Pipeline Masters final in 2006. Wow. I'm going to take this home. I'm going to take this one home and actually learn a little bit more.
I do have one question, though, because on the website, with the surfing website, it says, Andy Irons, he's from Hawaii. The question is, and then they list Kelly Slater as being from the United States of America. When did he's from Florida? When did Hawaii leave the U.S.?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I guess you missed the memo. Yeah, they're no longer.
It's a surfing thing, right?
They're done. They have seceded from the union. All right, let's move on. And let's talk a little mainstream college basketball right now. A major statement game over the weekend. Wisconsin against Pittsburgh. Wisconsin, a team through the years that you've had to respect. While they're not thought of as a Big Ten power like some of the other schools, Michigan State's won championships, Michigan has won championships, Ohio State getting a lot of ink this year. The Wisconsin Badgers behind Alondo Tucker. If you haven't heard this name yet, shame on you. Because Tucker, who was, in many people's minds, a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate before the season started, after his early start this season, he might be a legitimate Naismith Award candidate right now. Wisconsin, by the way, huge win over Pittsburgh, and that's a team to keep an eye on here as we go and make our move into the new year and start trying to figure out who are the real teams that we need to pay attention to come tournament time.
And Wisconsin #4 in the latest AP poll, the highest ranking ever for the Badgers. And, Bo Ryan came in there a few years ago, and he has done a tremendous job with this team. If you remember back in 2005, the tournament, Wisconsin, nobody gave them a shot against North Carolina in the Elite Eight. First of all, nobody gave them a shot to make it to the Elite Eight. They do. They get it all the way to Syracuse at the Carrier Dome playing against North Carolina. And Alondo Tucker, as just a sophomore, had 25 points in that game. He's really been the leader of this team since that sophomore season. His freshman year, he had Devin Harris in the lineup, who left after his junior. You know Devin Harris now with the Dallas Mavericks as their starting point guard. But he's a guy that, last year it was the first Wisconsin Badger since 1950 to lead the Big Ten in scoring. There's no reason that he doesn't get the press. Last year it was Marco Killingsworth at Indiana, and all the 3 guys at Michigan State, Maurice Ager and Shannon Brown, and Ohio State. Everybody was thinking about Greg Oden coming in this year. You're right about all that. But Alondo Tucker, he's got a 39-inch vertical leap, and he's 6'6". He's going to be a great NBA player.
Well, and it's funny you just said that, because before this season started, if you looked on a bunch of the mock drafts, and those have become very popular because we love to speculate where guys are going to be, where they fit in, he wasn't even part of the mix.
Nope.
He wasn't even considered part of that group. Now he is. Alondo Tucker
shame.
Making a name for himself right now in college basketball.
All right, how about college football and a team making a name for itself as well? And, sometimes a lot of people, they get caught up in the bowl championship series, and they get caught up with Division I and Florida, Ohio State. Should Michigan get in there? Should USC? You know who's got it right? Former Division I AA. It's now called I'm blanking on this, but it's the subdivision. Football Championship Subdivision.
I don't
Division
like the name.
I don't either.
They got to work on that.
But whatever it is, they've now called it the Division I Football Championship Subdivision. They've got it right. a 16-team playoff system, and they actually crown a national championship. And for the second straight year, Appalachian State is the national champion in that conference. And you know what? One of the best offenses in the country. They have a running back, Kevin Dickerson, who set the NCAA record with 31 total touchdowns. I'm sorry, Kevin Richardson, not Kevin Dickerson. 30 rushing touchdowns, 31 total touchdowns. And the Mountaineers 28, they beat UMass 17, so it's back-to-back titles. Georgia Southern was the last. Was the last team in '99 and 2000 to win back-to-back titles. They've done it 3 times. But we'll go Division I AA because that's what people are familiar with.
It's easier.
It's easier. That's what people remember.
I don't know why, if they're trying to get rid of the connotation of AA. I'm not quite sure what the decision was to make a move in terms of the semantics, but they've got to come up with a better name. Well, the subdivision sounds worse.
You know what, so they can work on that, but the fact that they actually have a playoff system and actually crown a true national champion, and the fact that these players go through the regular season. They had 11 regular season games, and then they had 4 playoff games, and they won all 4, and they scored a lot of points in there. And they are the true national champion. And, folks, later on in the show, we will have one of those players from Appalachian State, Corey Lynch, will be joining us. He is an All-American, so he will be joining us later in the show. And right after the break, we have another guy to join us right in the show. That is the one, the only, Charlie Casserly. Stay tuned, folks. Get your calls in. 646-CBS-1000, 646-227-1000. Remember, the first 2 callers, $50 gift certificate to CBSSportsStore.com. Stay tuned.